Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Revolution Recap. The Revolution avenged their loss from New York City FC 2 weeks ago with a 2-1 win at home. Despite conceding early, the Revs got goals from Emmanuel Goateng and Tajon Buchanan to take all 3 points of the evenings. The Revolution also worked back Adam Buksa as well as Tajon Buchanan back into the lineup as they returned from international duty, while Carles Gil made a full 45-minute appearance in the second half and registered his 16th assist on the season, which is by far the league lead in MLS right now, doubling up second place, which is a current 6-way tie with 8 assists as of this recording. I'm Greg Johnstone. Joining me today is Sean Donahue. Sean, how's it going?
Good, and another exciting Revolution win. I'm glad we got that to talk about.
Always fun to talk about 3 points and not the other way around. It was certainly a lot more gloomier a few years ago when we started the podcast. At this point, I think people are they're probably getting bored of us complimenting this team so much, and they want to hear us rant and rave a little bit. But there's not a whole lot of negative takeaways. We're going to try, but this team just keeps on rolling and rolling.
And we're going to avoid Spurs talk today, so don't worry about that.
Well, you know what? We have a third guest today, so in the interest of time, I think we will cut the Spurs talk, but we'll get you next week. But that third guest, I do want to bring in my boss from the Bent Musket, Sam Minton. Sam, how's it going?
Going good, and since you want to bring up EPL, shout out to Manchester United and Bruno McNamara with a beautiful goal.
Absolutely. Glad to see T-Mac's inspiration across the pond. Let's talk. Let's bring it back stateside. Let's talk about the best team in MLS right now, the New England Revolution. Sam, what was your key takeaway from tonight's victory?
Yeah, my key takeaways. Once again, Emmanuel Goateng, he's called upon, and he just continues to, have these great performances. He was able to get the goal. It was a nice play by Edward Kizza. He definitely just could have tried to get his first MLS goal, but he laid it off to Emmanuel Goateng, and he was able to slot it home. And, for me personally, it's something where I'm starting to think that Emmanuel Goateng deserves some more minutes. I asked Bruce Arena after the match about it, and he kind of made it seem like I was being way too complimentary to him. But I definitely think that Emmanuel Goateng has done well. And once again, he just answers the call, and he seems to be Mr. Reliable for the New England Revolution so far this season. So it would definitely be, at least to me, I would definitely like to see more of the Goateng out in the field.
Absolutely. And, I think Bruce laughed and seemed a little taken aback by your comment. I think he's just kind of confused that you were saying something positive in the press conference, Sam. I think that was just really throwing him off his game a little bit. When they're winning, though, I mean, it's hard to find negatives in this team. But, Sean, what was your thought about Goateng tonight? Do you think he deserves more minutes? And then, also, he came off at halftime for Carles Gil. Were you surprised he was taken off at halftime?
Yeah, I thought he played really well. In his passing accuracy, 95.7%. To be fair, I think just about everybody on the Revs had a pretty good passing night. But consistently we've seen from Goateng that he's a very, very dangerous player. And when the Revolution have kind of been without their key danger men, I think when the Revolution are without Carles Gil, Adam Buksa, Gustavo Bo, and Tajon Buchanan, as they were tonight, then there's a lot of pressure on somebody else to kind of step up and create chances. And Goateng has kind of been that player in those moments, and he certainly was tonight. You wonder where the goal is going to come from, and he provided that spark and got the goal. So I certainly think he's earned more minutes. Always the question is, when the Revolution are 100% healthy, which they're not right now, where do those minutes come from? And I think that's kind of the difficult question to answer. And I still think that the answer is, off the bench when everybody's healthy, is that he's going to be that super sub when you need a goal. But with that said, everything he's done certainly has earned him more minutes, and it's tough to say that he shouldn't be starting games. I think he's just, the problem is he plays in a position when everyone's healthy. Minutes are hard to come by, and certainly starts are hard to come by.
Yeah, and Bruce after the game mentioned that it was between taking off Goateng or Kaptoum, and he felt Kaptoum was a little more fit. Obviously, Goateng doesn't have a whole lot of minutes. Now, when he does get those minutes, he's really shining. He's doing really, really well. So I think I kind of agree with the rest of the round table here that more minutes should be coming his way. But I wonder if Bruce has doubts that he's a 90 minutes player, or if that is the best way to utilize him, if maybe his speed is better in short spurts. So I'm curious to see how he's utilized forward, because I think he is making a very, very strong case to start and kind of be on that left wing where Tristison hasn't really worked out. I know they've gone to the diamond a little bit, and obviously some players are going to be coming back, so maybe he kind of moves back to a bench role regardless. But right now, I mean, you look at the players that they ran out tonight in the starting lineup, obviously a lot of players missing. Boateng, I think, was a shining star in that first half, and obviously he had the goal scored, but that first 20 minutes, the rest of the team kind of slacked a little bit, and as I say, I thought he was one of the better players the first half. Was surprised he came off at halftime. We did get a question from Cleggy. I'm going to just hop into this one real quick since it's related, but he says, after Boateng's goal and Tristansen's suspension, do we ride the hot hand and have Boateng start while Tristansen comes off the bench as an impact sub? I don't mind that, and maybe Tristansen comes in for Boateng. Maybe when he tires down, maybe we see Boateng for 60 minutes or so, and then bring in Tristansen. They've been playing Tristansen a little more centrally anyway, so I think maybe if they go to a 4-2-3-1 and if they need a left winger, I'd be fine with that. But with the players returning back from international break, Tejan Buchanan is going to be in the lineup. Books is going to be in the lineup. Heel is going to be back in the starting lineup soon. I'm not sure if there's going to be a long-term starting spot. Sean, do you have any thoughts on that about Boateng staying in the starting lineup?
No, I agree with that. If the options are Tristansen and Boateng, then yeah, I'd rather see Boateng start, but I don't think either of them are going to eventually start whenever, assuming everyone gets healthy. And I don't want to delve too much into what I think the starting lineup is, because we've talked about that before. But I think if you do have, Carles Heel, Gustavo Bo, Adam Buksa, and Tejan Buchanan all starting, I don't think there's really room for either of those two players. And part of that is in what you saw tonight, in which, Matt Polster covered a lot of ground. He had to do a lot of work to, fill in for Brandon Bye when Brandon Bye pushed forward. He was just about everywhere. And I think they used Captoom to kind of complement that on the other side. I don't think Captoom had anywhere near the impact of Matt Polster, and that's something we'll talk about later. But I have trouble seeing the Revolution finding a way to make a formation work where they don't have another central midfielder next to Matt Polster. So with that in mind, I don't think it's a Boateng versus Tristansen conversation long term. It might be a short term conversation, and in that conversation I go with Boateng, but long term I think it's probably neither.
Sam, anything to add before we move on to Sean's takeaway?
Nah, besides that, I definitely agree with you. Obviously, if it's Boateng versus Tristansen, I think Tristansen has just been too unreliable, so I would definitely go with Boateng. But at the end of the day, when this team is 100% healthy, he's going to be more of a super sub to come off the bench.
Yeah, I think this conversation is more damning for Tristansen, who seems to be sliding down and seems to be one of the more disappointing signings in the offseason. I wouldn't call him a bust. I still think we're seeing some positive things come out of him. He had a very nice set piece in Philadelphia. I still think Tristansen has a role on this team, but I think you compare him to Boateng. I don't know many people that would rather see Tristansen than Boateng right now in the starting lineup, or getting more minutes, I should say. Sean, what is your key takeaway from tonight's 2-1 win?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was a difficult one to have a takeaway from, because the Revolution, I don't know if there was anything that I really learned about the Revolution in this game that I didn't already know. But with that said, I thought one guy that kind of stood out to me that, has gotten a lot of press for his records, but not maybe as much press for really outstanding performances that he deserved. And that's Andrew Farrell. I thought Andrew Farrell had one of his better games of the season. He led the team in tackles with 3. He led the team in interceptions with 2. He led the team in clearances with 3. But on top of that, I don't really think he stepped a foot wrong defensively. But what really kind of stood out to me was his passing. Not so much the passing percentage. It was at 83.5%, which, was a good number. But for tonight's performance, I think just about everybody was ahead of him on that. But he had a key pass in this game, and he had a lot of long balls. He led the team in accurate long balls with 8. But they weren't just, lucky long balls played forward, just kind of clear the ball. They were, with purpose, and they actually led to a couple of Revolution counterattacks in this one. And that was just something that stood out to me, was that I thought Andrew Farrell defensively was very, very solid, but in transition actually played a key role in playing long balls forward to get to guys to start counterattacks. And there was a lot of times where I think the Revolution bypassed the midfield, especially in the first half. And, that a lot of that was because Farrell was able to play really good passes forward. And I think that was, kind of necessary with, Captoom not being as involved as maybe you'd like for him to be as a central midfielder. But in a game where, the Revolution kind of proved to me that they are who I thought they were, which is a really good team with a lot of depth. Andrew Farrell just kind of stood out to me as one of his better performances of the season. I think he deserves credit for not just defensively, but offensively providing a spark for the Revolution.
Yeah, Mr. Reliable came in pretty good with some long balls today. Had a small effect on both plays and kind of made both goals happen. So, Sam, anything to add on Andrew Farrell and his performance tonight?
Yeah, I definitely thought those direct balls that he did a great job, providing that service and just doing well. And, like you said, he's been Mr. Reliable, and also to go back to the post-game press conference, Bruce Arena seemed very confused by why Jeff Lemie was asking about Andrew Farrell's long balls, but he definitely had an impact on those 2 goals. So credit to him. It was definitely another quality performance from him.
Yeah, one thing that I think is important to note is that we were questioning his role in the lineup, and obviously he's a club legend, as Brad Feldman would tell you, and certainly his impact on the team, has been felt throughout the years. But his spot was kind of in question earlier this season, and he's put in some reliable performances of late and has really stepped it up, along with Henry Kessler, who, since returning to the lineup with John Bell out, has been pretty solid as well. So, overall, I think positive marks from me from Andrew Farrell as well. My takeaway, I'm going to go on the negative side. I know people want to hear us rant and rave. I want to talk about Wilfred Kaptoum. Sam, we did a pregame Twitter Spaces that I know we did not advertise, so a lot of people probably missed it. But you asked me who is going to have the show me game, who's got a lot riding tonight, and I said Wilfred Kaptoum. He had a bit of a lackluster outing in Philadelphia. I thought this was a game that, with the injuries, with people returning, this was going to be one more chance for him to make an impression. He was probably going to at least get some minutes, if not start. He did end up starting, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe one of the last auditions he has this season, with people returning back to the lineup, with people getting healthy. Just another not very effective performance from him tonight. His numbers were mostly fine. I can pull up his pass accuracy here in a second. I had it up a second ago, and I have lost it, so I'm going to stall for time.
90.3%.
90.3%, which doesn't sound bad. But outside of the passing accuracy, he really did not have a whole lot going for him. He just wasn't very involved in the game. Davies said he never found the game. 1 for 4 on duels. He had a clear. He was dispossessed once. He had 5 recoveries in, I think, about 60 minutes. So he was there, but he wasn't really an effective player. It wasn't a performance that you wouldn't expect from Maciel or a healthy Luis Caicedo. I think would have played a little bit better and had more of an effective game from Kaptoum today. So passing wise, he was fine. He didn't make any huge errors, but he just didn't really have many moments today where I thought he was wonderful. There was one moment, I think in the first half, where he had a 1-2 with Teal, and then Kaptoum kind of crossed it low. That was immediately cleared, and then Kaptoum gathered it back and kind of went down to the baseline and forced out for a corner. I thought that was, pretty okay. There was a play where Kaptoum kind of crossed the ball in for Kizza. And Kizza kind of chested it down to Teal, but it didn't really lead to anything. Those are my 2 notes on Kaptoum. Those are my 2 times I noticed Wilfred Kaptoum on the field today. So that's pretty bad that, there was just not a whole lot I can say about Wilfred Kaptoum. And for a guy that was supposed to be one of the shining stars of the prior offseason, we're getting Maciel production from him. And I would not be surprised if the team moves on from him this year. Some signings like Tristison, you can say you see, some decent set pieces, and there are some games he does really well. I'm finding it very hard to find positive things to say about Kaptoum, and he just doesn't seem to be a fit for this team.
Greg, I think you stole my take from last week, but I'm 100% with you. I called Kaptoum a bust last week, and nothing in this game changed my opinion of that. The one thing I will say is that I think in Philadelphia there were a lot of bad turnovers from Kaptoum and poor passes, and times he was dispossessed, and he mostly avoided that today. But the same issue that he had last week was just lack of involvement. He had 35 touches over 60 minutes, and that's not enough for a central midfielder. Polster, went 90 minutes and played more time with the team up a man, but he had 101 touches. So you get the idea. The 2 of them are playing side by side. Kaptoum had 35 touches. Polster had 101. And he just didn't have an impact defensively. Offensively, his passing was okay when he got involved. Again, not that involved. Which is, a big problem, I think, for a central midfielder that you expect a lot out of. And I think is why the Revolution bypassed the midfield a bit, because they don't necessarily trust Kaptoum. So to say he did better than the Philadelphia game, I would say that. But it's not really saying much because, he wasn't very involved. The only thing he did better was when he did get the ball, he didn't turn it over as much as he did against Philadelphia. So I still don't know what he offers the Revolution that Scott Caldwell doesn't offer. Certainly that a healthy Luis Caicedo doesn't offer. I think, Scott Caldwell would have had just the same, if not better, passing accuracy than Wilfred Kaptoum had he started this game, and could have done, more defensively than Wilfred Kaptoum did. So I'm with you. He's making a ton of money to do I don't really know what. The best you can say about him tonight is he wasn't a liability, but you expect a lot more from a guy making $500,000 plus.
A key takeaway, so nice. We made it twice. Sam, anything to add on Captoom? And do you think there's any kind of path for minutes going forward from him, or are you with us and that you're kind of ready to wave the white flag on him?
Yeah, I think I was kind of taken aback when there was the declaration that he was a bust. But I think it's the only way you can think about it now. And to be honest, not just Captoom, I would say really all of Bruce Arena's international transfers from this last, kind of window, they've been kind of really disappointing. Obviously, Tristan kind of has something still there, and obviously Mafla has just been hurt the entire time. But I think with Captain, you kind of just have to give up. Obviously, you have a player like Maciel, a young guy, you want to give him minutes. So at the end of the day, I don't think that the Wolfer Captain signing will go down as a very bad signing. It'll just in recent history, it'll remind us of Bootner, but I would even say Bootner had more of an impact than Captoon. So yeah, it's rough, especially because all we heard about was how he came up from Barcelona and everybody was so excited about that. I was probably excited about it too. But I think the only way you can view it right now is that with the money he is making and the lack of production, he's a bust. It's really as simple as that.
I actually like the Bootner comparison because Bootner, you don't necessarily think of him being a massive liability, but he didn't ever really shine, and you needed him to shine. They were kind of on similar dollar amounts. I believe Bootner was at 660 and Captoon was around 500. So Captoon's not a TAM player, but still, I think there were a lot of expectations for Bootner and Captoon, and they kind of fell off. Mafla, I'm willing to give a bit of a pass to because he's been hurt, and even when he came back, Jones has held down that left back spot pretty well, so I don't think he would ever get minutes anyway. So I don't really want to say it's a poor reflection of his ability. He might be a perfectly fine left back, but we just haven't seen it because DeJuan Jones is just that much better. And Tristan, again, as you say, I see a little bit there. If he has year 2 with the Revs, if he comes back next year, I could see him breaking out and playing a little bit better. But Captoon, the way I kind of see it is I really don't have a lot of faith for a year 2 if Wilfred Captoon is still around or if his contract runs through next year. Sean, anything? You kind of already ranted on Captoon. Any response to what Sam said?
No, I just completely agree that the international signings so far have been disappointing from Bruce Arena. Captoon, I'm ready to declare a bust. I'm not ready to declare that of Mafla and Tristan like you, Greg. But I think Mafla has shown he can play when he's healthy, and Tristan I think has shown some signs that he could get there, which like you said earlier, we haven't seen from Captoon. But it is if the Revolution weren't performing so well, I think we'd be talking a lot more about this. But because the Revolution are performing so incredibly well and on pace to break the record for the most points ever, nobody really cares that the 4th highest paid player on the Revs, the 5th highest paid player on the Revs, and the 7th highest paid player on the Revs, all of which were brought in by Bruce Arena in the offseason, have been disappointing. And, you can give Mafla a pass on his talent because he's been injured, but you knew he was injury prone when the Revs signed him. So at the same time, Bruce doesn't get a pass on that. He was known as old glass legs, and he's lived up to that reputation for the most part. Like you said, you can't knock his talent because he's been hurt. You can still knock the signing because it was predictable that he was going to be hurt. And with that said, DeJuan Jones has been one of the best left backs in the league this year and is earning interest from international clubs overseas that could sign him. So he's played so well, it hasn't mattered. Captoon, I think that has actually been one of the questionable spots in the roster where you don't necessarily know who the best person is next to Scott Caldwell. So I do think that one has hurt the Revolution a little bit. And then Tristan, I think when everyone's healthy, even if he was performing well, he might not be a starter. So, at least 2 of those 3 signings haven't really hurt the Revolution because other guys have stepped up and done so well that even if they're performing well, they might not be getting minutes. So to me, the big hole and the biggest disappointment is Captoon because I think the Revolution could have used somebody in that spot that he plays at, because the other options of Maciel, Caldwell, and Caicedo when he's healthy, are good options, but they're not amazing options.
I agree with everything you said there. And one correction, though, I think you said a pairing to go along with Scott Caldwell. I think you meant Matt Polster, who has been kind of a stable force in the midfield. Scott Caldwell, though, should get an honorable mention tonight. Another save for the best closer in New England. I believe he's 8 for 8 or 9 for 9 on the season in terms of save opportunities. I think they've conceded only in the game he started. I don't think they've conceded in any relief appearance from Scott Caldwell. So once again, nailing down the save. Great job, Scott Caldwell. I do want to talk about one person that was missing from this lineup, very noticeable from missing from the starting lineup and from the 18. And there were two goalkeepers in the 18. So if he was any sort of available, he would have been at least in the 18. But Gustavo Bo missing the second week in a row. Sam, where are you on this? Are you concerned? Do you think that we have another Carlos Heel situation where there's a mysterious injury and it might be a big deal? Right now, Bruce is kind of playing this off as a minor injury. He said he was expecting Bo to be available this weekend. That was not the case. Are you concerned about Gustavo Bo?
It's kind of interesting because I was able to attend training, I believe, on Wednesday, and I was able to ask Bruce because Bo was not at training, so I asked about the comments Bruce has made, and he said, "We'll see." And he did say yes, he's not at training. But after the game today, he was asked a question by Tom Quinlan, basically along the lines of saying, "Do you kind of have the ability to take it really slow with Bo?" And just with how well the team's playing. And he kind of made it seem like Gustavo Bo could have played or even appeared on the bench tonight if the Revs were maybe in a playoff battle or something like that. But he didn't tonight. So I think we could see him soon. I'm not as concerned as with Carlos Heel. Also, too, Carlos Heel is just the heartbeat of that entire attack. I don't think the Revs can win an MLS Cup without Carlos Heel. As much as I love Gustavo Bo, the Revs do have some strikers. You do got Adam Buxa, and you have Tajon Buchanan on the wing causing chaos. So I think he should be coming back soon. I think the Revs are just really taking it slow. They realize the lead they have at the top of the Eastern Conference, and they're not going to rush it back. They realize that Bruce Arena said it plenty of times that, the MLS regular season is a long one. You count the playoffs. That's what they're focused on. They're focused on making a long run. So I think they're focused on having a completely healthy Gustavo Bo instead of rushing him back and possibly, even him getting hurt again.
I completely agree with everything Sam just said and think he's 100% right on this one. The only thing I'll add is that as Sam knows better than anybody, Bruce Arena has been completely untransparent about Revolution injuries this year, starting with Carlos Heel. So I think that what he's saying is probably accurate about Gustavo Bo, and I think that Sam's analysis is accurate. It's hard to say for certain just because Bruce Arena has been so bad or such a refusal to be transparent about injuries this season that it's ever hard to say for certain that this isn't something more than he's letting on.
Yeah, and by the way, I guess we should also give credit. I know he gave credit earlier a few weeks ago to Seth McComber of the Bent Musket on his report for Carlos Heel. He said Carlos Heel will be out for 3+ weeks, and I believe Carlos Heel was out exactly 3.5 weeks. And then I think, Sam, you talked to Carlos Heel and confirmed that it was a sports hernia, so Seth had that one nailed completely right, which we knew all along. But I think a tip of the cap deserves to go to Seth, because without that report, no one knows what exactly would have happened. And we would have been very in the dark, like we are right now with Gustavo Bo. And on that Carles Heel front, I don't understand what Bruce's angle was to deny that report, because I don't think that was... I think that looked a lot worse than that injury was, finding out that Carles Heel is over in Spain and saying, Carles Heel isn't expected to miss any time the day of a game against Nashville, and then Carles Heel is missing the next 5 games. I mean, it looked a little bit worse in my mind that, Bruce was trying to hide something when really I don't think Carles Heel's injury was worth hiding. It was a minor, sports hernia that didn't require surgery. So, this might be... I feel like we're going through this again, except we have less details. I feel like it's probably a minor injury. I feel like Bruce Arena is not trying to freak people out about it, but by doing this shtick, I think it does freak out people that there is something looming. So I'm not totally concerned. I think he's just trying to, hide things, but I don't know. Sam, though, I want to also touch on one more point you made there about bringing back Gustavo Bo slowly. I asked a few months ago Bruce Arena a question at the press conference. I think at the time it was about Luis Caicedo and maybe Christian Mafla and a few other people working their way back from fitness. But I said, does having the lead in the Eastern Conference, does that let you kind of bring people back slowly, and does it kind of bide their time? Can you hold them back a little bit more? And he said, we don't hold anyone back. If they're good, they're good. So, I think that this is probably a scenario where Bo not being in that 18 tonight shows there is something there. It's not nothing. But I agree. I think if you're in the Revolution spot and you can err on the side of caution, err on the side of caution. There's no need to push Gustavo Bo in an early September game when you have a 15-point lead in the Eastern Conference. That's just kind of nonsense. So, it's not great. It's not good to see the lack of Gustavo Bo out there, but the Revs are able to take care of business without him. So, all's good, I guess. One person I wanted to touch on actually a couple people I wanted to touch on real quick. First, we'll go with Brandon Bai. Brandon Bai is obviously working his way back from injury. Another 90 minutes tonight. Sam, what did you think of Brandon Bai tonight? He seemed a little out of position, seemed to get a little caught off guard on the New York City goal early. What are your thoughts on Bai's performance tonight?
Yeah, definitely was not his best performance. While I do want to give credit to New York, that was a beautiful ball, but Bai just let his man go. It was really some bad defending. So it's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, he was recovering from an ankle injury, but especially, with how he was doing this season, you kind of expect more from him. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But tonight definitely was not a good night for him. So hopefully he'll be able to bounce back against Columbus.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. I think, a lot of times you see a play like that and you can justify it because, they had maybe two options of guys to cover. He only had one guy to cover on that play and he let him go by him. The Revolution actually had numbers back. So that was a really bad play. You don't want to, burn a guy just for one bad play, but overall, he had 93.2% passing accuracy, which for him is really good. It's a great percentage. But I think offensively, a lot of his crosses weren't great. He attempted 10 crosses, only one of them found a teammate. Got forward a lot, but I think the end product wasn't always there. He did have one key pass. Very much a mixed bag, I thought, from him. But it's hard, for that one defensive play that cost the Revolution a goal and put them behind early, to ignore that. And I do think that you expect a lot better from Brandon Bai than what you saw in that play.
Yeah, not his best moment overall, and you expected, some solid defense out of him. Obviously, he's very good in the air, and he's been improving defensively. Not a great moment. Not going to end up on his highlight reel. I thought his crossing too left a little bit a little bit desired. He had one really, really nice cross on the play with Teal where Brandon Bai is out wide. Teal pushes it up to him. I think it was in the 39th minute. Teal goes to Bai. Bai sends a beautiful cross in, but Teal was just running from too far of a spot away, and it just is barely out in front of him. And then actually McNamara kind of comes in and fires off a shot off the post. So that deserved a goal because I thought that was a wonderful cross by Bai. But outside of that one cross, I thought Brandon Bai did not have great service on the night. So a little bit of a mixed bag from Brandon Bai, where a little bit poor defensively, and maybe we're talking about a game where he has an assister on that Teal play, but I expect a little bit better from him, and hopefully he regains his form.
Yeah, I think that cross was his one accurate cross out of 10 attempts, and I also think that accounted for his one key pass. So that one play was a great highlight, but offensively, I completely agree. I think his crossing left a lot to be desired other than that one really good one.
It was also completed to Tommy McNamara, who was not who he was going for. And to his defense, if you watch that play, I think if he curls it any closer to the back line, it's probably deflected out. So he really put it into a very dangerous spot where if Teal Bunbury is able to reach that spot, it's a goal. Or at least it's a very, very good chance. And if you watch that play, Teal Bunbury had to sprint from he had to run a very long distance to get to that spot. So tough play. It was a very, very good cross. He deserves positive marks on that low cross. But yeah, what'd you say, Sean? 1 out of 10, I think.
1 out of 10.
Yeah, I mean that's his one downfall. If he could cross, he wouldn't be on the Revs anymore. He'd be playing at a higher level. But defensively, I thought it was a bit of an off night for Brandon Bai as well. One other guy too I want to touch on real quick, who I think might have had an off night coming back from national team duty. Matt Turner had a bit of a scary moment there kind of towards the end, replacing reigning team of the week goalkeeper Brad Knighton. Matt Turner, not a whole lot of action for him, but had some shaky moments from him. Sean, any thoughts on Matt Turner tonight?
Yeah, it brings back a comment that he made after the last break when he won the Gold Cup with the U.S. and then played right away. I think that time it was a Sunday night Gold Cup final, and then he played again for the Revs on Wednesday. And this one, I believe, was a Thursday night game, and then playing for the Revs on Saturday. So similarly, very quick turnarounds. And he, not after that game, but after the game after that, he mentioned that it was tough for him emotionally to come back and play that game, to go from that high that he had from that, and then jump right into MLS so quickly. Lack of sleep and everything. And that probably made it so it wasn't necessarily his most comfortable game. So, based on that, I think I even said in the last podcast that I kind of thought Bruce Arena, because Turner was so transparent last time that, maybe, he wasn't 100% there for that Wednesday game. And because Brad Knighton was playing so well, that I thought Bruce Arena might actually not start Matt Turner in this game, but he did. And, his judgment was off in a couple of plays. You don't say that about Matt Turner very often. He's been so good for the Revolution, but it's hard not to wonder if there was kind of a hangover effect from, especially coming off that Honduras game, a very emotional game for the U.S. when everyone was so down at halftime and they scored 4 goals in the second half to get a very important win. You do have to wonder if he came back from that, probably didn't sleep a lot on that plane ride and had such a quick turnaround for this game, that was playing a role, because it was not his best performance. Certainly they won the game. I don't think there was anything he could do on the goal, but there were a couple other plays that I think he was probably lucky he didn't get burned on, because his judgment wasn't as good as it usually is.
Sam, anything to add on Matt Turner? I think, Sean, you put everything very well there, but I want to see if Sam has anything before we move on.
Yeah, it was just so weird, It almost reminded us of that first game when Brad Knighton was in there, where it was just an uncharacteristic mistake. My God. But yeah, it was really kind of stunning to see. Luckily it didn't end up in more goals, but like Sean mentioned, it can just be that high of coming back from international play and kind of making sure you're focused. But it was definitely weird seeing Matt Turner make a mistake. I don't know if you want to call it a mistake, but it seemed like a mistake there.
Yeah, and Sean Johnson almost outdid him a few minutes later with a pass directly to the Revolution, and Sean Johnson had to make an amazing save off of Carles Gil to keep the game 2-1. So not great moments from either Matt Turner or Sean Johnson late in the game. Not really looking like sweeper keepers at all. But maybe they both have a hangover effect after the United States national team duty. And by the way, I want to take a quick moment before getting listener questions to talk about our sponsor, Golasso Kits. Golasso Kits' mission is to bring unique vintage jerseys to your home with a catalog of jerseys, jackets, scarves, and more from clubs and national teams from over 80 countries in the world. That's a lot of countries. 80 countries. It's crazy. The passion for the beautiful game doesn't have borders, and neither does selection, with every corner of the planet represented. Check out GolassoKits.com for their full selection, and make sure you follow them at Golasso Kits on Twitter, or their Instagram, Golasso Kits on Instagram, for updates on their new inventory. They have a handful of Revs items still up for sale, as well as countless United States men's national team items, so you can support your home country as they stumble through World Cup qualifying yet again. They are always adding to their selection, ranging from clubs to Brunei to a LAFC retro jacket. How can you have a retro jacket for a team that is less than a decade old? I don't have any clue, but Golasso Kits has it. So when you find something you like, if you use promo code REVSRECAP, you'll save 15% off your order. That is promo code REVSRECAP at GolassoKits.com for 15% off your order. Links and the code are in the show notes. Let's get to some listener question, guys. I'm really excited about this one. Let's start out. Actually, we got a question here. Just came in from Traeger Durati. Does the backline turn it down a notch with Matt Turner and net over Knighton because they view Turner as a security blanket? How do you change that mentally? So, Sean, let's start there. Do you think it might just be that the defense has a little bit more faith in Matt Turner, or, as you say, do you think it's more of a hangover effect, like you said?
I don't think it's that. I think that if you kind of look at who the Revolution have played with Brad Knighton available and with Matt Turner available, I think if the defense looks worse with Matt Turner, a lot of it is because they've played more difficult opponents. New York City FC is a really good team. It's a different game than playing a Philadelphia Union side that's playing a bunch of teenagers. So, I think if you go back and look through the various bad defensive games, it's because they've played against better teams. Like at the last New York game at Yankee Stadium, the defense looked really bad. Brad Knight, I don't think that was because of who was in goal. So I just think it's more of a matchup thing that, good offenses can expose the Revs defense a bit more and less about who's in goal. But, I wouldn't blame them if they felt a bit more comfortable with Matt Turner behind him, because he is the best goalkeeper in the league.
Yeah, I do believe, one of the games where Brad Knighton came in, Brad Feldman on the broadcast mentioned that, maybe the back line was laying off and almost like they had Matt Turner in that. So it is kind of interesting, hear the announcers say that, maybe that is the case. But I would say more often, I just think that the New England, like Sean said, they play competitive teams, and you got to balance that when you're looking at, Knighton's performance versus Turner's performance. So I wouldn't say it's that. I just think, sometimes it's not the fact that they're taking, a foot off the gas pedal. It can just be that, they're facing good opponents, and credit to NYCFC. They're very good opponents. They have a good attack. So I think it's more credit to NYCFC than the Revolution just letting up.
I was just going to say, and a lot of the games that Matt Turner's missing for, too, as during international breaks, when the Revolution are playing teams that are also missing a lot of guys for international breaks, top strikers even. And, even look at the Philadelphia game, they were missing 7 guys due to the international break. So you were playing a very weakened Philadelphia squad. And, yes, Brad Knighton had a good game, and the defense probably looked a bit better that game than it did this game, but it was an easier opponent. So I think it's more of a coincidence on who they're facing. Well, not even a coincidence. It happens because Matt Turner's missing when other guys are missing because of the international breaks. But I think it's a lot more of that than anything of the defense taking it easy when Matt Turner was in net.
Yeah, and in terms of the mentality too, I don't think it's necessarily a mentality. They did seem a little poor at the beginning of this game, and I think that might have just been New York City came in with a little bit more energy. As you guys said, this is a tough opponent, so I'm not totally sold on. Maybe the defense switches off a little bit. I think it might just be a road game. New York City is trying to dictate it from the start, and maybe they just, get off to the right start. I mean, outside of that play that I think was Brandon Bye's fault, Matt Turner didn't necessarily have any horrible moments until the end of the game there, where I think he was a little over aggressive. So I don't know. I thought the defense played, I don't want to necessarily say great, but I just think that they might have been caught off on the back foot a little bit against a very, very strong opponent. So, we got a question here on Discord from Cameron. Did Kizza earn more game time after tonight? For the record, I thought he was poor tonight. Kizza, I'm not a huge fan of Edward Kizza. We've seen him 2 straight games now, 2 straight starts. Hold up play, all right. I think he could use a little bit of work. First touch could use a little bit of work. He did get his first assist tonight, but it was from a Teal Bunbury low cross that he really couldn't control, and he salvaged the play a little bit by tapping it in an open space and setting up Emmanuel Goateng's goal in the first half. So he gets credit for making the assist. He does have some decent awareness, but overall, I'm not in love with him, and I don't think he's a finished product. And I personally don't like him as an MLS starter. I'm not sure how much of a future he has in this league. Just seems to be a little rough around the edges. Maybe he's going to be a bit of a project. I'm not ruling him out as a bust just yet. But in terms of did he earn more game time after tonight, I am a pretty solid no. I think he can go back to Revs 2 and develop a little bit more. Sam, am I wrong with this take?
Like always, Greg, you are not wrong. I have to say, I thought Kizza did have a good performance. His hold-up play, he's been solid, but I'd rather see a Teal Bunbury come on as a sub when you have guys like Bo and Busa healthy. I feel that he's, like you said, more of a project. Get him some time with Revs too. Obviously, he's been able to perform well down there. Just kind of continue to have him fine-tune his skills, and maybe in a year or two, then he would be in a position to be a solid bench piece or, even more. But for right now, this season, I think ideally you have Kizza with Revs 2 and you have a guy like Teal Bunbury coming off the bench, replacing a player up top. And, hopefully it's not like Justin Rennicks. I believe I saw a Twitter comparison that compared Kizza to Rennicks. And no offense to Justin Rennicks, but I really hope Edward Kizza does not end up like him. But, it definitely seems like more of a project and then a future investment when it comes to Kizza.
It might have been from a certain co-host of ours who has the night off. Sean, any thoughts on Kizza?
No, I completely agree with what Sam said. I do think that he's gotten better from game to game for the Revolution when we've seen him play. I thought he played fine tonight, but at the same time, I think going into the game, he's the 4th striker on the Revolution roster, and I think going out of the game, he is still the 4th striker on the Revolution roster. When Gustavo Bo and Adam Buxa are healthy, they're starting, and Teal Bunbury is the first guy, to fill in if one of them is out. So I don't think any of that has changed, but I do think that he has looked better and better as the season's gone on. But I'm far from ready to say that he should be getting more minutes when people are healthy. I don't see him as kind of if everyone's healthy, I don't really see him as an option off the bench. I don't know what scenario you'd put him in for. So I think he could have a future with the Revs, but I don't think that as the Revolution head towards the playoffs and go on a playoff run this year, that he's going to be much of a part of that.
Yeah, I don't want to say he doesn't have a future in MLS or anything like that, but I don't if Kizza is playing significant minutes in the 2021 playoffs, something has gone wrong. I'll put it that way. We got a question from TSB11. After Tajon came on, we saw both Teal and Tommy play opposite him on the wing. Did either of them impress you out wide? Sean, what are your thoughts about Teal and Tommy McNamara playing out wide tonight?
I thought they were okay. I mean, in both cases, I don't think either one really impressed me too much. I didn't think Teal had. I thought Teal had a pretty quiet game. He did have a couple of chances where he got himself into dangerous spots, but I don't think he was, particularly effective when he was out wide. And same with Tommy McNamara. I thought, Tommy McNamara has been very good for the Revolution this year, playing in all sorts of different roles. But he played the full 90 minutes and had 50 touches. And again, the Revolution were getting a lot of time on the ball, especially when they're up a man. So that he wasn't as impactful as we've seen him be in the past. But with that said, I thought he was fine. Nothing about this performance changes my opinion of Tommy McNamara, which has gone up a lot this year. And I think he's been a key contributor to the Revs, and has really made himself a guy that needs to be in consideration for starting every game. But I don't think he had an amazing game, and I don't love him when he does go out wide. I think he's a lot more effective in the center. And as far as Teal goes, I still think Teal's better as a striker than a winger, but he's perfectly adequate of playing on the wing when he does. But I don't think he had that much of an impact in this game when he did drift out wide.
Yeah, it's just basically Teal and Tommy Mac, they had decent performances. I would have to agree. I'd rather see Teal as a striker, and I think at the end of the day, McNamara is just better in that more central role. So hopefully we see more of Tommy Mac, but credit to him just because he's been a real kind of Swiss Army knife. He's taken any role that Bruce has asked of him, and he's definitely had a quality season so far. So shout out to Tommy Mac.
Winger, central midfielder, Shakespeare, Tommy McNamara does it all. Got a question from Discord from Macho. Were the Revs robbed by Club Brugge, only paying $7 million? And Traeger on Twitter also might have some seller's remorse here. Was $7 million enough for Tajon Buchanan? Explain to the people how the magic numbers work, because it should be talked more about. And I think it's worth noting that there is a sell-on fee if Tajon is sold, which he probably will be. The Revs get a little bit of additional revenue in the future. Now that's probably like 10% or something small. So if he sells for, I'll say $15 million, it's only another $1.5 million. So I would say that at most, the Revs are going to get $8 to $8.5 million from this. I don't know if Tajon Buchanan's ever going to be sold by Club Brugge for $20 million. Maybe. I don't know. In terms of where does that number come from? Well, I think if you look at the Brendan Aronson sale last year, I know there's a little bit of a different position here. But I think that you can kind of look at all of the American sales and kind of go over to Europe and notice kind of the trending upward too. So I think there's probably some sale comps between, players of that position and then other star players in MLS, and kind of a combination between the league and the position. And somehow they landed on $7 million. I'm fine with the sale price. I think we talked about this. I forget if it was offline or if it was on the podcast, but I'm perfectly fine with the sale price. I think the rumor about Chelsea bidding $11 million or something or whatever that was, I think that was complete BS. I don't buy that at all. I think that was kind of a weird rumor, probably put out there by an agent or maybe someone in Tajon's camp to kind of boost the price last minute. But $7 million seems fine to me overall. I know he had a great game tonight, but you never know when Tajon Buchanan's contract might be ending next year. Usually first contracts are 4 years, so next year would be his fourth year. So it's potential. You have the potential of maybe going into Tajon's contract year. You also risk potential injury. If Tajon tears his ACL, that drops his market value and you lose a lot of leverage. So I think the Revs did the right thing selling at this time. I think $7 million is a very, very fair price. That's going to add a lot to their budget. They're going to have a lot more flexibility to what they can do next year. And obviously when he has a good game, you're going to, feel like it's not a whole lot, but I think people need to recognize that Tajon is post-college. He's in his low to mid-20s. His contract's coming up soon. And I think $7 million is a pretty fair price all the way around. So, guys, anything you want to add on the price of Tajon Buchanan, if there's any seller's remorse on your end?
Nah, I think at the end of the day, we're going to see Tajon continue the ball out, and we're going to be like, how much could we have gotten for him? But $7 million, that's definitely, I would say, a fair price. And, that gives the Revolution some money to play with and, hopefully go out and make an acquisition that, replaces the eventual loss of Tajon Buchanan. Because it's definitely going to be a big loss. He's someone who goes at the defenders, constantly is drawing fouls, and has been scoring goals at a pretty decent clip so far this season. So definitely think it's a fair price. Obviously, if we're going to continue to see him perform well, we're going to wonder, oh, could we have gotten more? But at the end of the day, it's a solid price, and the Revolution should be happy. Revolution fans will definitely be happy, and Club Brugge should definitely be happy with the player that they're going to get.
Yeah, and I think this conversation would have been, different if it had happened on September 3rd instead of today, when Tejan Buchanan played for Canada against Honduras in a very poor performance, got a yellow card, gave up a penalty kick, and was subbed out at halftime and had ice around his ankle, and people were wondering if he had a serious injury. In which case, that $7 million looked like a great job by the Revolution to protect their asset and make sure that they didn't end up in a situation where they were in December. He was 12 months out from his contract expiring. I don't know if that's necessarily true. That that there's only a year left, but presumably, assuming that, they could have been in a situation where he was injured, and they got nothing for him because 6 months from then you could sign a pre-contract agreement with somebody else and go for free. So I think the Revolution made a smart move selling him that window. I think his value is very high. I think $7 million makes sense. And of course, when you see Tejan have a good performance against El Salvador to close out the window for Canada, and then have a good performance tonight, you're gonna think maybe the Revolution could have gotten more. But I still think that it was the right price the Revolution got. I think it was the highest amount they were going to get in the window in which they traded him. And I think if they didn't make that transfer in that window, there was too much risk going forward that value could drop, that he could get injured, or that his contract could be only 12 months from expiring instead of 18 months, and then your negotiating position is a lot worse.
Yeah, the bidding ended shortly after scoring against Mexico. There was not much more Tejan Buchanan could have done after he scored against Mexico in the Gold Cup. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of buyers or remorse, and honestly, too, if they ended up selling him for $9 million with a sell-on fee, obviously that's a lot of money. $2 million is a lot for a MLS, budget. But as I say, I think there was a lot more downside, and that price could have gone down if you held on to him as opposed to going up. And the other discussion is maybe they could have signed him to an extension and made him U22 player or something like that. But ultimately, I don't think. I think it was in the best interest of both Tejan Buchanan and the Revolution to sell him and move on, because it seems like Tejan Buchanan also wants to move abroad and play overseas and extend his career that way as well. We did get a question here too from the Terminator on Discord. How do you see the Revs protecting their guns, Tejan, Buxa, and Heel down the stretch? We kind of touched on this earlier, Sam, about maybe not pushing them too much, especially with their big lead. We specifically talked about Gustavo Bo, but do you see them maybe limiting the minutes of Tejan, Buxa, and Heel down the stretch as well?
It's definitely something that could happen. I think it will all depend on, if the Revolution are going out and winning games like 4-0, then yeah, you have the opportunity to maybe take a guy like Tejan Buchanan out after 50 or 60 minutes. But I do think, especially someone to watch is Carlos Heel, just with his injury history and him getting injured again this season. I think he's someone who could see his minutes decrease. I wouldn't say like he just completely misses a game, but it wouldn't surprise me to see him get 60 minutes or, even 45 minutes. And if the Revolution are in that situation, they're able to take him out and just ensure that he's healthy. Because obviously, like I mentioned before, without Carlos Heel, I do not know if I do not think they can win an MLS Cup. So you need to make sure that Carlos Heel's healthy. And if that means, taking him out in the 45th minute or the 60th minute, that's just something you have to do. So I don't know what they're going to do with guys like Tejan, Buxa. Bo definitely could, again, be someone who gets arrested, but I definitely think Heel has to be arrested.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add there is that, some of it's out of their control with Tejan Buchanan because of the international break and how crazy compact they are this year. So if he's playing 3 games in a row for Canada, you're risking that he could get injured. And there's nothing the Revolution can do about that. But I do think that the Revolution, because they have such a big lead in the standings, there are still a lot of midweek games on the Revolution's schedule coming up. And, I think at a minimum, none of these guys should be starting 3 games in a week. I think that, the Revolution have the lead, enough lead in the standings where they can afford to do that. And, we've seen Carles Heel get injured. We've seen Gustavo Bo get injured. I think the Revolution need to be smart, and none of those guys should start 3 games in 1 week. And there's no reason why they need to, given the lead the Revolution have in the standings.
Yeah, and well, one person that I think we might see a little bit more is Adam Buksa, who wasn't always a 90-minute guy, but I could see them running him out a little bit, maybe to show him off too, because as James Downing is asking us about, there was a report out of Poland that was dug up by Revolution Report. By the way, if you're on Twitter and you're not following Revolution Report, you absolutely should. Nothing gets by Revolution Report. So if you are into rumors and any sort of Revolution chatter, you need to follow Revolution Report. But Revolution Report found today that Leicester City reportedly made an offer to buy Adam Buksa 6 months ago for an undisclosed price and planned to loan him to Belgium, but it did not interest Adam Buksa or his agent. German and Italian clubs are also interested in Buksa, as well as Monaco, which was a rumor from a while ago, so this allegedly confirms it. And, quote, big talks are starting now. And it's also worth noting that I believe the Poland manager mentioned that Buksa has talked to him about transferring back to Europe in the offseason. So maybe he's trying out for European teams. Sean, what are your thoughts on these latest Buksa rumors?
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising to me that after the window he had that there's interest in him. I don't know if I believe everything that's come out about previous interest, but certainly after the window he's had for Poland, he put himself on the map in Europe. Getting starts next to Lewandowski alone is very impressive. That Poland thought that he was the right man for that job. But then scoring 4 goals in that window certainly helped things as well. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Adam Buksa goes back to Europe. I think he always saw this as kind of a launching pad for him to boost his career, play really well, and get a move back to Europe. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happens in the offseason. Whether or not these specific rumors are accurate and where it's going to end up, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that Leicester would be interested in him before this window. I don't know what he had done to kind of deserve that. But I think after this window, there's undoubtedly going to be a lot of interest in him, and I wouldn't surprise me at all if he's sold in the winter.
Yeah, agree with you there. And, I think Buksa did an interview before this season, too, where the plan was always to kind of be here short term, and this was going to be another stepping stone to Europe. So now that he's getting looks with the national team, I'm sure he wants to kind of keep that momentum going. And, the Revolution, when they bought him, allegedly, kind of the talk coming out of the Revolution was that this was going to be an investment, that they were buying a young player that they were hoping to profit off of. And allegedly he has a 3-year deal. I believe he said he had a 3-year deal in that interview. So there might be kind of the feeling that this is his last year and the Revolution might be moving on from him. So interesting that Leicester City is the one that is kind of coming out. That just seems like a very, very higher team than I kind of expected. We heard Monaco, which seemed a little... that also seemed a bit high for Adam Buksa, especially before he kind of had his hot stretch recently. But the fact that there is interest from Europe in general is not a huge surprise. There was always interest in Buksa even before the Revolution bought him. I think a lot of teams see him as a high potential player, especially if they have wingbacks that can cross and need an aerial threat. So he might fit in with a lot of teams over in Europe. James Downing also asked us a couple of questions. He said, "Why did Turner come flying out of the net like my FIFA keeper when I mashed the Y button?" We gotta touch on that one. I don't have any idea, but that's absolutely a great comparison. I gotta say, at least Matt Turner didn't do a flying knee this time like he did to Wayne Rooney that game.
Yeah, we'll give him credit for not getting ejected and doing something stupid like that. But I don't think anyone's got the answers of what he was thinking there.
Yeah, learning moment for Matt Turner there. And also James says, is Bai's service lacking or is it just me? Definitely not you, James. We touched on that a little bit earlier. Definitely not you. But Eric asked a question. Did anyone see Henry accosting Carlos Heel after the final whistle? From my vantage point, it seemed like it could be either him teasing Heel for not shooting when the keeper was still out of his net, or he was actually upset about something. And Sam, I don't know, did you see this from the press box? We saw it briefly on camera as the final credits were coming up. Did you see this happen from the press box, and what was your take?
Yeah, unfortunately, basically because we have to get rushed down to the field in order to participate in the post-game press conference, I didn't see this. I did see it on Twitter, I believe. I don't know, it might have even been you, Greg. Someone said it might have been, Heel actually being like, hey, we should have gone that third goal or something like that. But overall, I've talked about Kessler before. He seems to really be establishing himself on this team, making a role for himself, being a physical player, being kind of an enforcer, I guess you could say. Obviously, there was incidents out in Philly where he had the entire state of Pennsylvania after him. So it seems like Kessler kind of has established himself on this team. He's no longer that young rookie. he's a center back. He's gonna let you know if you did something wrong. He's not afraid to get in an opponent's face. So it's really been interesting to see him kind of etch out this role for himself.
No, I agree with you 100%. It seemed like he was trying to tell him something, like he wanted a ball somewhere or something like that. I was trying to remember what play this could be talking about, and it seemed recent. It seemed like it had just happened, or Kessler missed something. But I'm not totally sure what it was, so I'm really confused. Kessler seemed to be the one kind of explaining himself to Carles Gil, so I'm not totally sure what happened. There was the play at the end of the game where Gil was leading a 3-on-2 and he left it for Buxa, and Buxa kind of worked his way back into the center and shot the ball wide, so it still led to a pretty good chance. So I don't know if there was something on that play that they missed, or if there was something. I'm very, very, very confused as to what exactly happened there. I'm going to chalk it up as nothing, probably just teammates arguing over a play or something like that. But it's very weird to see that type of confrontation after a game. So yeah, I'm going to chalk that up to nothing. But we'll see. I wonder if any Revs make comments on it after the game. I'm just going to assume it's nothing, because there was nothing really significant going on before that. So Eric also asked, actual question I had tonight: who picked the location for the fort in Gillette? Did they just default there because it's an end line? It's just a bummer to see them rocking with all their might, but to still hear the away fans because they have better acoustics in that corner. That's actually something I've never really thought about. Sean, what are your thoughts? I assume it's just because it is at the end line and it's closest to the parking lot, so you have to make the away fans walk all the way around the stadium, and make the press and the away fans walk to the other sides of the stadium, while the fans can have an easier walk in from their tailgate.
Yeah, I don't know the background on why it's been there, but it's always been there. It was, there in Foxborough Stadium. It's there as long as I can remember. I'm sure part of it is they wanted to put the fort where the tickets are most affordable, and that's the end line. I'm sure that was part of it. I don't think they wanted to put the fort and make it GA or something at midfield when they can sell those tickets for top dollar. But I think it's also I'm trying to think. I think throughout the league it's generally in the end line. I agree the acoustics aren't the best, in part because of how Gillette's designed with the big gap for the lighthouse and the tunnel there. But I don't know really what the thought process was putting it there, other than it seems that's pretty common where supporter sections generally are in stadiums throughout MLS, and it's the the cheapest ticket in the house. So it's probably the easiest for the Revs to kind of make that the GA standing section, as opposed to doing it in midfield or something.
Yeah, I also want to give credit to NYCFC's fans, because even though I did see a report that there might have been some shenanigans after the match, they definitely showed out. I was in the press box and I could hear the drums. Like, it seemed like they were right below us. So credit to them for showing out. But yeah, it also seems like if the Revs were in maybe a soccer specific stadium, they might have better acoustics for their fans. But we'll never know if that happens.
Add acoustics to another reason why the Revs need a soccer-specific stadium. We'll add that to the long-going list. I'm sure that'll change things around Foxborough. One more question here from Jason Schmidt. He says, the first half wasn't bad. Even without Bo, Buxa, Buchanan, and Gil, this team runs deep. So the question, how far would this Revs team have gone in the U.S. Open Cup if Chris didn't mess it up and get it canceled single-handedly by saying the Revs would win the Open Cup? Sam, how far do you think the Revs would have gone in the U.S. Open Cup?
I mean, because Chris messed it up, I'm pretty sure they would have won it all, and Chris ruined that for all of New England. Even with just how deep this roster is, the depth's crazy. Matt Pole's been talking about it in the post game, but this team is so deep, and I definitely think they could make a run, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they won it. So it's a real shame that Chris decided to ruin that for all of New England, even all the way out in England to our boy Mike over in the United Kingdom. Chris just decided to ruin that for everyone. So it's a real shame, honestly, a real shame.
No, I was just kind of saying though, I think that the depth on this team certainly could have seen them do very, very well in the U.S. Open Cup, and it would have been great to watch, and it would have been great to see guys like Kizza get minutes in that tournament. My only one hesitation there is I think Bruce Arena's only won, for all the great teams that he's had, I think he's only won the Open Cup once, and that was back in 1996.
That just means he's due, Sean. That just means he's due.
It's just, to me, with all the talent, the teams he's had, I'm not sure how much he actually cares about the Open Cup, and again, maybe that wouldn't have really mattered because they have so much depth this year. But if they came up against another team like a Seattle that we know cares a lot about the Open Cup, that might have been their downfall. But yeah, the depth of this team could have seen them go pretty far, I think.
There definitely is a podcast that Bruce Arena did where he complained about being with the Galaxy and they had to like fly to Charlotte or something for an Open Cup game, and they had to use one of their charter flights and they had to spend like a huge amount of money to fly to like Charlotte, and then they end up losing the game anyway. So I don't think he's a huge fan of the U.S. Open Cup. But you know what? I think that's just a front, and I think that it just bothers him that it's been so long since he's won the Open Cup. And he probably would have gone for it all in this year. And with this team, I mean, I'm sure they would have gone all the way. I think it's a fair statement to say that Chris cost the Revs a trophy, potentially a treble if they win the Sports Shield and the MLS Cup. I think that's a really fair statement.
I also think that's a very fair statement, and it's just a real shame. And I would hope that Chris doesn't have to hear about this, but it's a real shame that he did that to every single Revolution fan.
Also, I do want to. You mentioned Sam, a fan over in the UK, Mike, NE Revs UK. Also, shout out to I'm going to mispronounce your name, Greg. I'm so sorry, but Greg Pirco, who is down in San Marino, and he is representing the Revolution. He tweeted us a photo of him in San Marino, the land that Adam Buxa has conquered on international duty. So the Revolution, one step closer to becoming a global brand. So just wanted to give him a quick shout out tonight. And then one more thing before we get going, and we did not prep this, so I have some suggestions here, but we did get a comment from Traeger before the game. Actually, it was in response to you, Sam, where he wanted us to come up with some nicknames. I guess, Sam, you tweeted out that you were calling Tejan the Six God. Is that because of Toronto? Is that why it's Six God? Is that his new nickname, Sam?
Yeah, I was just thinking about Drake. So yeah, in Canada. So
I got it. See, as someone who is over 30, I know very little about Drake. But yes, Traeger says that wouldn't Polster be the Sixth God? And then he also says he wants to call Adam Buxa the Postman because he hits the post a lot. So he wanted to see if we could do a full episode on giving nicknames, maybe during a bye week. So I was kind of coming up with some nicknames. I want you guys to grade them here. I was kind of thinking of some during the game. I know you guys don't have any suggestions, but I have a couple of them right here. You actually, Willie beat me to this, but the obvious Emmanuel Goateng instead of Boateng, so it's Goat.
A+.
I think we have to go with that. And I know I came up with that before Willie tweeted out, so Willie stole my ideas from reading my mind. So I don't appreciate that, Willie. But I just wanted to throw that out there that I had it first. It was written down before he tweeted that out. I also, Carl Sutherland tweeted at us that he thinks the correct way to spell Matt Polster's last name is Pollstr, like Polster, like completing a poll. So I want to call Matt Polster Matt Anti-538 Polster because he's very reliable, kind of like the opposite of 538 Polsters.
That's a bit of a mouthful. But I like it.
Matt, Anti-538 Polster. I think it works. I got one here. Edward Hauche Kiza, because we were told he's going to score goals, but he doesn't have a professional goal yet.
Oh,
too soon for that one. I'm gonna give that a D- right there.
Also, Piz is just such a strong nickname.
I should be nice. He got an assist. I'll cross that off the list. He got an assist. We'll be nice. But also, too, here's the one I got here, because Henry Kessler had his heel turn last week in Philadelphia, which, by the way, I was at. I loved every moment of that. I was in a Philadelphia Union section, and the amount of curse words that were coming out of children's mouths were hilarious. So just a full heel turn from Henry Kessler. It reminded me of the greatest heel turn of all time, when Hulk Hogan turned on Randy Savage in 1996 in WCW and became Hollywood Hulk Hogan. So I want to call Henry Kessler Hollywood Henry Kessler. What do you guys think of that one?
I mean, I think Kessler already has a really strong nickname in King Kess, so it's going to be really tough to top that.
He's got to go full heel, though. I want to see him be a full... He dove again today, by the way. I don't know if you guys saw that, but there was a time where they were wasting time and he fell down again easily. Not afraid of the fines at all, so...
I believe it's Tom Clinton who Kessler was leaving, and he asked Kessler where he's from, and he's from like Lower Manhattan. So like, I feel like it'd be disingenuous to call him Hollywood. You know, he's a New York City kid. Is he an uptown boy?
Hadn't he like nicknamed himself Longlegs at some point too? Yes. Does he? How many nicknames can he have?
I mean, when you're that much of a legend, you can have infinite nicknames, in my opinion. So I'm gonna say I'm 1 for 4 here. This was not a good showing. This was like Captum on duels. This was just not a good showing for me tonight. But I'll kind of think anymore. And if we have any suggestions from our listeners, please tweet it at us. David Sibilian had a couple of them. Andrew, Mr. Revolution Farrell, and Dewan the Smile Jones. Dewan does have a good smile, so I'm fine with those ones. Those are better than mine. And I assume you guys don't have any other suggestions, and you want to move on from this quickly.
No, I mean, we could call Dewan Jones DJ. It'd be simple. I was thinking of the Lil Wayne song "Go DJ." But besides that, Matt Turner either has to be the People's Keeper or America's Keeper.
I like the People's Keeper.
Yes, I was tweeting with Sam from the Sam's Army podcast, and he coined that term, so I want to give him credit. The People's Keeper, it just has to be that. I think that's really all I can have. Do we want to call Wilfred Captoon the Invisible Man because he just doesn't show up? Maybe. I don't know.
I thought we were being nice here. If I don't get credit for the Hauche Kiza nickname, you don't get credit for the Invisible Man nickname.
Hey, it's a little bit different to go negative on a rookie that hasn't had that many chances yet over going negative on the fourth highest paid player who came up through Barcelona's system.
I guess this is fair. Either way, I'm really glad that no one from the team actually listens to this podcast. So, yeah. Guys, any final thoughts here before we part tonight? Oh, actually, one more thing. Actually, and we're talking about Willie. While we're talking about it, they said on the broadcast, an unnamed player on the Philadelphia Union who may or may not be a German-born Polish striker took Willie's phone and threw it. That's a pretty insane story. So justice for Willie's phone. # justice for Willie's phone. Pretty messed up. And Philadelphia fans think it's all messed up for, Henry Kessler to throw a ball into the stands. I'm sure they're outraged that Willie's phone, which has so much incredible content and is certainly much more valuable than some crappy ball, got chucked. So I just want to throw that in there. That's pretty messed up. A named Philadelphia striker. It's I don't know. Very very disappointed to hear that.
Yeah, I'm very disappointed to hear that a not so friendly ghost would do such a thing. And speaking upon that, I do just want to mention I was able to ask Henry Kessler why he decided to launch a ball into the stands last week, and he said, "I think the ball had to go. The first one had to go. Then I saw the second one, and I was on the sideline, out of position, so I thought the second one had to go as well." I mean, that's just amazing work from Henry Kessler. It's a non-answer, but to me, it was beautiful.
The one thing I got to say from all this is the Revolution haven't had a real rivalry in a while. Back in the day, they had rivalries with Chicago Fire, with the Metro Stars, Red Bulls, and with DC United because they were playing them a lot in a lot of meaningful games in the postseason. And, because the Revolution have been sporadically in the postseason and those other teams have been kind of sporadically in the postseason since, I think those rivalries pretty much died. So really over the past couple weeks, to see the Revolution build a rivalry with Philadelphia, that I think is kind of been because they played so many games over the past few years and play a playoff game. And now I even think with New York City, I think this game, got kind of testy towards the end. I think we're actually starting to see some, actual animosity between teams. And that's exciting to me because I don't think the Revolution have really had a real rivalry in a while.
I mean, Union fans were not happy. And to be fair, if this happened against the Revolution, I would be very mad about it as well. This was incredible trolling from Henry Kessler. But yeah, I mean, between the rivalry, from the COVID rivalry where we were playing Philadelphia seemingly every single week, to this latest installment, and it seems like the last few games with Philadelphia has been very physical, has been very chippy. It seems like for whatever reason, it seems kind of personal. And even before the Henry Kessler ball thrown into the stands, Carlos Gil was taking a beating when he came into this game, or I shouldn't say this game, last week's game. So yeah, it's a real rivalry to me. I think Philadelphia is our new rival. Because I think DC and Chicago have kind of fallen off the map, and New York just the hatred doesn't seem to be there. Whereas I think Henry Kessler has taken this up a few notches and has really is one of the most unfavorable people in Delaware County right now. So kudos to Kessler, though. That was hilarious. It was very hard not to reveal myself as a Revolution fan in that moment and trying to hold in my laughter because that was just absolutely splendid. So, any final thoughts here, Sam? Any final thoughts before you depart?
I'm just very happy that we finally figured out why Kessler wanted to get rid of that ball, and just happy that the Revs were able to walk away with a win. And also, you did just kind of mention, with NYCFC, Tati Castellanos is a very aggravating player to watch. He's like the definition of like a pest, like in hockey. Reminds me of Brad Marchand. Just very annoying. And also, he's very annoying when he can't score from like 2 feet. But besides that, good win for the Revs, and hope they continue to just keep rolling.
Sean, anything you want to say before we wrap up here today?
No, I just agree with Sam about Castellanos. I mean, I think I trashed him a bit a few weeks ago for all of the great chances that he was blowing and leading the league in big chances missed. But I think he's kind of been on fire since then. So I'm going to take credit for his finishing getting a bit better. But he is a extremely frustrating player to watch when you're playing against him because of how skillful he is and what he can do against you. And I have to imagine he's been an extremely frustrating player for New York City FC to have because of all those chances he's missed this year. And I think New York could be a lot higher in their points total if he was a bit more efficient with his chances, which I think he has been the past few weeks, but hadn't been earlier in the season.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to point out, actually, I'm kind of looking through here, but Tim Crawford, someone asked us a question about how many points the Revs need before they reach a playoff, before they clinch a playoff spot, and Tim Crawford has replied to him and said that the number is 59, and they are currently at, 55?
55, which every year in the history of the league has been good enough to make the playoffs, so it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and it looks like Nashville tied tonight, so they're up 16 points on Nashville, although Nashville has 2 games in hand. But even if they win those 2 games, we're talking about a 10-point difference there. So a very, very comfortable lead from New England. Oh, sorry, it just updated. Did it? Nashville won tonight, didn't they? Nashville won tonight. I apologize. Nashville won tonight. But even if Nashville wins their next 2 games, we're talking about an 8-point gap between first and second place. So very comfortable lead by the Revolution. And I did have a final thought, but I completely forgot what it was, so I'm going to lead into the outro. Please follow us on Twitter at Revolution Recap if you don't already, and please also follow our Revolution Recap Instagram and Facebook pages where we post updates on our podcasts. Also, please check out our sponsor Golasso Kits, as we mentioned, and please use promo code RevsRecap for 15% off your order when you find something you like. Go there, check it out. Follow them on Instagram, on Twitter. They do new reveals every single week, so if you go to their website, you don't find anything you like, make sure you're following them on social media, and you'll get videos weekly of their new inventory that's coming in, and I guarantee you're going to find something that you're going to want in your closet. Also, please make sure you're subscribed to iTunes or wherever you're listening. If you haven't listened to it already, please go back and make sure you listen to our interview with Brett Johnson of USL to Rhode Island. A very, very good interview if you're a soccer fan in Rhode Island or in the nearby area that's interested in USL soccer, lower league soccer. You're going to want to hear about that project that's going on there. He was very transparent. Some really, really great stuff there about what's happening down in Pentucket. And by the way, if you did like the interview, if you want to hear more interviews, we're always inspired when we get positive feedback. So make sure you rate and review us 5 stars on Instagram or wherever you're listening. We'll try to do another interview when we get to about 75 5-star reviews. So if you get us to that 75 number, we'll get another interview for our listeners. Maybe a midweek or a bi-week podcast. We'll squeeze another bonus. But after all that, that does it for this week. We'll be back next week after the Revs host Columbus and hopefully gain another 3 points. Until then, thank you everyone for listening, and go Revs.